Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 28th meeting of the Lawrence City Council Committee on Budget and Finance. My name is Dave Abdu. I am your chairman this evening. I am the district councilor from District E. I'm joined this evening by my colleague Anna Levy, city councilor at large, as well as our council president, Mark LaPlante from District F. With that, I would like to call the July 28th meeting to order and begin with the legal preamble that allows us to conduct this meeting virtually. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in this order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen or view this meeting while in progress may do so at the following locations. Those locations are articulated in this evening's publicly posted agenda, and I would direct anyone interested in viewing that isn't already doing so to please visit the Lawrence City Council landing page of the city website and or our YouTube page. Please visit the Lawrence City Council landing page of the city website. And I'm getting feedback. And or our YouTube page. Oh, bear with me. So with that, there are minutes. I am not going to entertain them at this time. There's quite a few, and I know personally I have not had the opportunity in a short period of time to read them. And so with that, I would like to note that we are joined this evening for the new agenda items by our City Chief Administrative and Financial Officer, Mark Iannello, as well as Cassandra Abufara. I believe, Cassandra, correct me if I'm wrong, you are the Deputy Director of the Lawrence Public Library, correct?
The Assistant Director, correct.
Awesome. Assistant Director, right? Is that right? Okay.
Correct.
My apologies about that. And so with that, I would, we will take up the first new item from July 20th referred to us is a request for the Lawrence Welcome Center grant in the amount of $15,000. And that is agenda item number 13821. So with that, I would ask that Ms. Abuvara please identify herself for the record and please tell us why we're here this evening and why we should support this item. Ms. Abufara, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Cassandra Abufara, the Assistant Director at the library. This Welcome Center grant came from a LEAD program that the director, Jessica Villasnovas, was a part of. And I actually have a summary here that was provided by Jessica Villasnovas that I would like to present tonight. With that being said, the LEAD program that Jessica did, there was an end of the year pitch to funders to be awarded up to $7,500, and the group that Jessica Villasnovas ended up getting awarded was $15,000, all for a community welcome center, an improved and comprehensive information services department in the library that will operate more intentionally to serve the community by gathering resources and disseminating them. The rest of the $15,000 will allow us to contract a consultant to do resource mapping around a 1 mile radius around the library and to provide a strategy on how to scale the resource mapping and dissemination for the whole city. This will be in partnership with many community organizations, and to list a few, that includes the YMCA, Northern Essex, and Lawrence Partnership. If there's any questions, I will do my best to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Abufara. Do you know, is this a first time for us, or is this a repeat grant?
This is the first time, this is a program that Jessica was in for the year. And through this program that she was a part of, her and her group gave the pitch on having a welcome center be presented to be in the city. And everyone agreed that it made the most sense for it to be hosted at the library. So this would be the first time that we would be getting something like this.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions. I open the floor up to my colleagues, Ms. Levy or Mr. LaPlante. Are there any questions or motions relative to this item?
I'll make a motion to send up to the full council with table recommendation, and then I'll ask a question after.
Thank you, Mr. LaPlante. There's a motion by Mr. LaPlante. It's been seconded, I believe, by Ms. Levy. Discussion. Mr. LaPlante?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Ms. Abdul Farah, this grant that we're getting, it's a welcome center. When I'm, why the library, and as opposed to maybe City Hall or any other location? And also, how do we know that that whatever the goal of the grant, if this goal is met and it's a successful expenditures of money, how do we know what's the criteria for success?
Yes, so in regards to why the library, initially, I mean, the library has been known for, just being a resource hub and the center for all the place of getting all these resources. I mean, we don't necessarily have that resource title, but the library has been a safe haven and a place for anyone to come in and ask a variety of questions. And we've been able to assist and direct many pages or many community members when they come into the building as well. In a sense, we all do that as well, where we are assisting and directing people to resources and a lot of it as well. And just realizing the proximity of where the location is and how far it is, with the neighboring locations in the area, it seemed like it would be the best fit for this place to take place. In regards to funding, this is honestly just the beginning, and then measuring the success of it. This is honestly just a small portion. There is also other funds that we are looking into to really expand this welcome center concept as well, because it's not just going to be a place where it's just, I guess, papers or handouts or things along that nature, but it's really going to be a matter of getting, a plethora of information and items and what I mean by items is making the place accessible as well, to keep it on that welcome phase as well. The plan behind the welcome center is really rebuilding quote unquote, rebuilding our reference area. The reference term right now on the second floor is a little bit of an outdated term, but the welcome center really addresses everything that we've been getting currently, from citizenship questions to school department questions, to resources on where people can get help with filling out paper applications, things along that nature. So that's why we're basing it at the library.
Well, that's a question, Mr. Chairman. When I think of a welcome center, I'm typically thinking of welcoming people from outside of your community to bring them in and say, welcome to our city. Here's what we have. Explore this, that, and the other. But it sounds to me, just by listening a little bit, this is not necessarily what it is. So who's the target audience for the welcome centers? People from outside of the city that are coming in, we're welcoming them, or people inside our city where we're a resource for distributing information?
No, you actually hit the nail on the head with that. It is for anyone coming in to ask, a variety of information for those who are in the city or even coming new into the city. We currently have patrons and community members who are living in the city who still come in to ask questions on, everyday items that they may not be familiar with, but also we have other people who are coming in new to the city as well and asking for these questions in regards to housing, in regards to how to sign up for things that they can get assistance with, so things along that nature. So it's really going to be a purpose for patrons who are currently in the city and anyone else who's going to be coming in new to the city as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's been 16 months and the mute button is still my challenge. Thank you, Mr. LaPlante, and thank you for joining us this evening and providing us the ability to have quorum. With that, are there any further comments, questions, or discussion on this motion?
Yes.
Ms.
Through you,
Levy.
Mr. President. Yeah. So my question is regarding is to do a comprehensive resort map, just only like within a 1 mile radius.
So yes, it would be, resource mapping, at least to begin, within the 1 mile radius outside of the library space.
So what about the other people outside of the area will not be counted for this?
So this is just the starting point, just to gather the information that we have currently within that radius. I mean, the ideal thing is to, of course, continue expanding out. But because this is going to be something that we are currently starting with, the starting point would be the 1 mile. But of course, the end result would be just to continue branching out, just so we can continue getting more resources outside of the 1 mile radius.
For how long does the grant is going to be work? For how long? What is the period of time that you are trying to do or use this?
So right now, I mean, it's in a sense of a pilot, if you can say, because this is it's a new grant, or it's a new, I don't want to say completely new, but I mean, the pitch was provided for these funders, and it was something that we want to put in play permanently, actually, where we want this to continue, of course, to be something that's going to be visible and reliable and just available for, a very long period of time. But in regards to us, getting it started, that's what we're here for. And that's what that $15,000 is going to do. It's going to get us started. And the end goal is for it to stay and continue. So it's just a matter of us getting going to see first how that 1 mile radius spans out. But the end goal is for it to just continue and expanding out from there.
Did you already hire the person who's going to do this? So you have it in mind?
No, so that's what this is going to be for. It's for us to hire a consultant. And right now the group has been meeting, at least the group who was awarded this $15,000. So they are continuing to meet in regards to figuring out who this consultant is going to be, and further fundings as well for this project as well. So you'll probably be seeing me back here again at some point.
Okay. So this is the first city that has been doing a program like this? Or this has been implementing in another city?
I'm not, that's not something that I can answer right now. It is, I mean, I speak personally in regards to saying this is the first that I've heard of it personally. But in regards to other places, I'm not too familiar with this welcome center concept. But, if we can definitely do our research as well and, provide that information. But I personally don't have that information at this moment, but can definitely get that for you if needed.
Thank you. No more questions.
Thank you, Councilor Levy, for that line of questions. And thank you, Ms. Abou-Farah. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. Mr. Garcia, thank you for joining us this evening as our clerk. I would ask you to please call the roll call.
Councilor Levy,
Yes.
Councilor LaPlante,
Yes.
and Chair Abdul.
Chair votes yes. Motion passes 3-0. And thank you, Cassandra. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you. The other new item this evening I'll call is 14321, and that was presented by our council president, Mr. LaPlante, who joins us this evening, and that is the city council social media policy. Mr. LaPlante, if you would.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just interrupt, that was placed there by mistake. That was a secretary's error of commission, and it was sent to the ordinance committee as was supposed to. And so I would at this point just advise just to disregard that item. It's been dealt with last night at the ordinance committee. We're going to take it up to full council at the next meeting. Thank you.
I would never, thank you. I would never challenge my president on parliamentary procedure or other matters, formal matters, but I would ask, should we withdraw it from the Budget and Finance Committee?
It was placed there by mistake. There is no need to withdraw it. It was a mistake of the thing. So it's like any other mistake you would have it on there. You would clean the mistake up. Shouldn't even been on there. So if you want to make a note in the record, that might be a good thing to do in the minutes and just say that there was a mistake and that it was properly sent to the ordinance committee as required by our charter and rules, and so it's been appropriately taken care of.
Duly noted, and I see Felix's head is down, so I have a feeling he's already writing that. So, Mr. Garcia, let the record show that 14321 was placed on the Budget and Finance Committee agenda in error and is therefore set aside. And at the risk of blowing Mr. Iannello's mind and asking for a motion to adjourn, we will move on to the long-awaited discussion on item number 11921, the proposed 5-year financial forecast and users guide and assumptions as presented by the Chief Administrative and Financial Officer, Mark Iannello. Mr. Iannello, welcome. Please provide your name for the record and tell us why we're here this evening.
Good evening, councilors. Mark Iannello, the CAFO for the city. And this is the annually, we put together a 5-year forecast. It includes the FY22 budget. And then we forecast that out through 23, 24, 25, and 26. So before you is a package of that product. It includes a couple of spreadsheets and then a 7 or 8 page narrative of, or 11-page narrative actually, of how we came up with these forecasts and what the estimates are, and there's a written narrative that goes along with it. I'm just going to see if I can go through the documents real quickly with you, not in a lot of detail, but you can read them at your leisure. But I did want to point out a few things the city plans on doing for this year and the next 4. So this forecast on the very first spreadsheet is a 1-page summary of the city's budget for each of those 5 years. And you can see the revenues are summarized into just a few categories: property tax levies, state aid cherry sheet, estimated local receipts, and other available funding and financing sources for total revenues of in FY22 of $347 million. And then down below is the expenditures by the functional categories of the city, such as general government, public safety, education, and so on. And what we've done at the very bottom of this summary spreadsheet is show the total revenues and the total expenditures of the city. And you can see that there's an excess, in this particular case, there's an excess of revenues over expenditures of $200,000. And that's because the final line, which is a collective bargaining impact, is $200,000. That gets our budget to be balanced for FY22. What we've done here is in the out years shown the effect of what collective bargaining would have on the budget. So we've isolated into that last line. For FY22, we've settled all the union contracts except for 2 smaller unions, and the estimate for that for FY22, should we come to agreement to pay out those agreements, would be approximately $200,000. But you can see in FY23, the collective bargaining impact, because all of the contracts would then be up for renewal, would be 1.2 million. And you can see in FY24, it's 2.2 million and so on. And so in the out years, in FY22, of course, we balanced our budget, so there's a zero deficit. But you can see in FY23, 24, 25, and 26, we are forecasting deficits without, making some changes to our revenues or the like. We'll have to make some decisions in the budget and so on. I also wanted to point out just going to the next spreadsheet, I wanted to point out some of the assumptions on the revenue side. And there's a one page, the next page in your workbook is a page with the revenues broken out by major categories. And at the very top of that page, you'll see the property tax levy, and then you see state aid, cherry sheet, local receipts, and all available funds, just as they were described on the summary page. They're in more detail here. And I wanted to point out at the very top, the property tax levy, the assumptions used. So for FY22, we have, we assumed in this budget that we've just passed, no 2.5% increase. But in the out years, we still have a 2.5% increase. And with that 2.5% increase in taxes, there's still a projected deficit. So there will be some decisions have to be made to balance this budget in the future. One of the things I just wanted to point out was our new growth assumptions. Counselors who have been on members of the council have been on for a while know new growth is items in our top property tax levy that have not been taxed before, new items, new properties, and so on. So our new growth, we've been spoiled with our new growth estimates over the last few years because we've had been a lot of construction done because of the Columbia gas crisis. However, in FY22, the year that we're in, we don't expect that to continue, and our new growth is estimated back to a normal amount of 1.2 million. So I've kept that 1.2 million conservatively budgeted for the same amount throughout the whole 5 years. That's the best estimate from our assessors. They feel more comfortable going back to a $1.2 million estimate. And I also want to point out the excess tax capacity line. It's the next to last item in front of the subtotal for property tax levy. You can see it's in FY22 we had 8 million because we didn't go up with the 2.5 taxes this year. That amount kind of sits in and gives the city the capacity to tax that amount at some future date. So last year, our excess taxing capacity was at 6 million. And this year we've increased it, is now 8.268, 8,268,972. So just about $8.3 million is kind of like sitting in the bank, should the city kind of need it. Of course, we'd have to, raise the tax rates on citizens. And the last time that was done, I believe, was in 2004 or 5. But we do have it's a good thing to have some excess taxing capacity. If property values ever fell in the city, we wouldn't have to cut our budget. We'd be able to. We have this kind of sitting in the bank, and we could use that in any economic downturns. So just to run over the major categories from our cherry sheet, Chapter 78 is the largest item there. As you can see, it's over 200 million, 222 million in FY22, and that's forecasted out through FY25. Local receipts are motor vehicle excise is our largest item, and then a bunch of other charges for services, licenses, and permits, and so forth. So we're estimating those at 14 million for FY22. And in other financing sources and uses, we do plan on appropriating 100,000 to our from free cash from our OPEB trust, our compensated absence fund, claims reserve, and our ILD. And then the last item is the transfer from indirect costs from enterprise funds. This is primarily water, sewer, parking, and airport. And then the next 2 pages are just the expenditures broken out by functional category. So general government includes, the mayor, the council, CAFO, and all the administrative offices of the city. Public safety is police, fire, and inspectional services. Education is the Lawrence Public Schools, along with the Greater Lawrence Technical School assessment. And then we have Public Works, Human Services, Library, debt service. We also have some deficit notes that have to be paid. That's part of the debt service, just separated in a separate line. We have state assessments, such as Merrimack Valley Regional Transit Authority. We have some motor vehicle, RMV charges and so on. And then we have employee benefits broken out by the major categories, our pension, health insurance, and so on. And then and at the bottom of the page, you'll see the total for the general fund is $346 million, which carries over to the summary page. So that, in essence, is the city's forecast. I can go into it in much more detail, but I think it's a general overview. And I think the most important page here is the one-page summary that kind of looks at the city's budget and gives the reader looking at one page, the overall expenditures and revenues of the city and how we seem to fare going through to fiscal year 2026. So it does show some deficits going forward. But I think in a $387 million budget by the time we get to 2026, I think a $2 million deficit is manageable. So that's my presentation for this evening. I'll take any questions councilors may have.
Thank you, Mr. Iannello. I just want to ask a couple questions about assumptions. On the first page, the revenues of the projected revenues over the next 5 years. Property taxes averaging about 3.4 million a year, and state aid cherry sheet is about 6+ million a year. Is that the average of the last several years looking back, and that's what you use to go forward?
For the Chapter 70 aid and the charter tuition reimbursement, I think I explained that in the, I think that's on page 8 of the explanations. I do explain what the assumptions were. And let's see, I think for charter, let's see, state assessments, I'm sorry, is on page 9. And I think we did use, hang on 1 second, I'm just looking for the amount. I think it was averaged over 6%. I thought I had it in the narrative. I know I saw it somewhere. But, give me a moment. Okay.
Yep. Yes. Nope.
Okay, so charter tuition was estimated at 5% a year for each year of the forecast for the expenditures. For the revenues, on the revenue side, I think we used the average of the previous years to come up with the Chapter 70 aid. And I think that's where we used Chapter 70 was 2.5% per year, lower than the average annual historic change of 4.8%. It's on page 5 in the next left paragraph from the bottom. Those are the assumptions for the cherry sheet aid.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Another question. So staying on that first page, the headline page, if you will, with you highlighted the projected deficits 23 through 26 based on the collective bargaining impacts. I noticed when you go to the expenses, when you look at public safety and personnel services, so personnel services as well as the public safety lines, all of the expenditures are flat. So can you just walk us through, I'm sure the collective bargaining agreements that are in place have escalators in them and how they're paid. Maybe they're in a side account.
Yeah, well, they're down below in the collective bargaining impact line. So what we did was, and we've always done this with our forecast, is try to isolate what the COLA or cost of living impact salaries would be. So in the forecast, that's why we're using the under general government, for example, personal services, the projection amount is 0%. So we're leaving the current year salaries alone and projecting them at a flat level for the forecast period. But down below in the collective bargaining impact line, that's where the personal service increases or cost of living increases are comprised. So the collective bargaining impact line for FY22, as I indicated, there's only 2 unions that were short. So we didn't put it in the general government piece and so on. We put it down here to isolate what the impact of cost of what a cost of living impact would be. And then of course in FY23, all of the unions now come out of, will be subject to collective bargaining. So I used a 2.5% increase for all salaries, and that's the line item where it shows up.
And I'm sorry for not following along closely enough, but maybe it's as simple as just clarifying for me. So on page 3 of the 4-page overview, those expenditure lines, those salary expenditure lines across the years are flat, but the impact of collective bargaining, you refer to the first page where you've got that singular line at the bottom that says collective bargaining impact, which, as you pointed out, shows 200,000 for this year, and then jumps to 1.2, 2.2, 3.2, and 4.3.
That's correct.
So it's all aggregated in that one line.
Right. And the idea was, and we had this, we first did this 3 or 4 years ago. I think the idea of the fiscal overseer wanted I get a better idea what the collective bargaining impact would be. So when the Collins Center came up with this forecasting methodology, they worked to isolate the collective bargaining impact, and I think it's helpful for everybody to see what that impact is, and that's why we stuck it on a separate line so it's isolated and it's very transparent.
And I'm just going to ask one more question so that I can give my colleagues their opportunity. Personnel services, so you're assuming new, and maybe I missed the COLA line, but you're assuming no adjustments for non-represented employees over the next 5 years?
In the personal service lines, there is no increase in salaries because the increase in salaries are in that collective bargaining impact line. So I wouldn't want to duplicate them.
But what about, my question was specific to the non-union represented executive.
Oh yeah, no, it's just they're also factored in as well.
So they're in the CBA line?
Yeah, there's not that, well, they're into cost of living impact. So if we gave cost of living increases to non-bargaining employees, it's still encompassed in the collective bargaining impact line. I just have a line in there for non-bargaining employees. It's in the workbook or worksheet with that calculation. There's not a lot of them, so it's not a big number.
Yes, I noticed a lot of executive-looking folks are in unions, so there's not a lot. Is the mayor in a union?
No.
Kidding. With that, I digress. My apologies. I want to open the floor to my colleagues, Councilors Levy or LaPlante. Do you have questions of Mr. Iannello at this time? Mr. LaPlante.
Thank you. I got a few, or just a couple. The one thing that really that startled me was the fact that even when we increase our taxes to the levy in the forecasted years, we're still going to be short. And you gave us confidence that out of an X number of $1 million budget, that's not a lot of money that we can make up. But when I see $500,000 and it's not coming out of schools, and I already hear departments saying that we're short on money, that just it just draws attention to the fact that out of the schools and just looking at the city side, it's hard to find $500,000. At least that's what's been told to me over the years. It's hard because you're gonna have to really make some significant cuts. So what's your reaction to that comment?
The school department has a budget of over $220 million. So I don't think a $500,000 is, again, is that much for the school department. It's half a million is a lot for some of the smaller departments. But there's enough flex in many departments. There's enough flexibility within the line items to operate. As you can see, I mean, this is we do project deficits going out even with a full 2.5%. So the challenge for us will be, well, geez, can we, in the out year, you can see in 2026, I'm projecting 2.1 million deficit after the collective bargaining impact. And can we manage that in 2026? Or will some of our revenue assumptions come in higher than forecasted? It's possible. So we don't know. But a couple of $1 million out of $387 million budget, we'll be able to. I'm sure we'll be able to manage that either through projected revenues or making some cost savings somewhere, or we'll have to manage either revenues or expenditures to make that balance. Here in Massachusetts, we have to balance our budget. The other thing that we could do, if nobody wants to cut the budget, is obviously that's where the 8.2 million in excess taxing capacity comes into play. We could certainly ask the taxpayers, hey, can you give us $2 million more and balance the budget? So that's a great position to be in. But I know our residents are, they're taxed. It's not a wealthy community. We can't go back to the taxpayers and ask for more money. So I take that challenge seriously. So we were able to balance the budget this year without going in with a tax increase, and that may be available to us in some of the out years, depending on how our city finances work out. Because of the COVID-19, we certainly have had a lot of our revenues projections have come down, but in some of the good years, local receipt estimates, for example, far exceed our estimates. So just hasn't the last couple of years haven't been that great, but we still have been able to conservatively estimate our local receipts and keep our budget balanced and contribute towards our fund balance or reserves, if you will. We do have a healthy reserve balance right now. We have approximately 10 million remaining from the previous year's free cash. So we expect to have free cash certified in a few months, and those reserves are also available to balance the budget, although it's not recommended because those reserves are may be unavailable in future years. So you hate to build a deficit into your operating budget that you can't sustain.
Hello.
We can hear you.
That's not good.
Mark, we can hear you. All right. Apparently we've lost Mr. LaPlante, and with losing him
back. Sorry.
He's back.
Back. Oh, good. Floor is yours.
No, thank you. No, thank you. So I got almost like 90% of it, but I got the thrust of it. So thank you. I just want to make one real quick comment to go to the next question. We talked about the unused tax access, or what's the word I'm looking for? The unused
excess tax levy capacity.
Thank you. The SX tax levy capacity. Then that's also, we got to be careful how we talk. I think how we talk about that, and just say that there's a little bit of a piggy bank there that we can always dip into if times get tough. But that means the piggy bank are taxpayers. The piggy bank is we increase their taxes That's the piggy bank. So it's not an easy thing to do. We might have that money there, but are we going to crack open the piggy bank and get the money out is the question. And I can see, and I've seen it now, and you've seen it, through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Ionello, nobody wants to break open that piggy bank. And we want that piggy bank to stay there and pristine and not be touched. So, which leads me to the schools, Leahy and the Oliver. What are the impacts? How do I see the impacts on this forecast?
Well, this forecast takes into consideration our financial policy to make sure our debt service is equal to 7% of our net general fund revenue. So this forecast fully funds that financial policy. As the Oliver School, because it was just recently approved, there is going to be some increases to that debt service, and I think it's year 2000. It might be 2000. It could happen in 2026, but I think we might be able to, depending on the timing of the project, push it out to 2027, where we will need to use some free cash to subsidize the debt service on the Oliver School. The Oliver School's debt service alone is estimated at approximately $5 million per year. And then after 2028 or 29, the existing debt will fall off, and Oliver will just fill in. So there's only a couple of years we're going to be a little short for the Oliver School. So that's not forecasted in this forecast, because that when that does happen, as I indicated to the council before the Oliver School was approved, we would have to tap into the plan would be to tap into free cash if necessary to fund that, have a planned use of free cash to fund those years for the Oliver School before the existing debt and budget will pick up the entire Oliver School.
Okay, so anyway, what I'm hearing is that this is not even in the forecast. We were able to somehow successfully kick the can down the road, and the impacts won't be seen until FY 2027, as far as these projections are concerned. Is that?
Yeah, well, we still don't know. We haven't borrowed the money for the Oliver School yet. So the Oliver construction schedule is just being developed now, and the schematic designs, or whatever they call it. Yeah. So the construction is another year away. Once we get an idea when the building construction will happen, then we'll have a better idea of the cash flow and when will we be borrowing for the Oliver School. But I don't expect us to borrow for the Oliver School in FY 22 and probably not even in 23, other than some short-term borrowing. It's probably not until 24 where the Oliver School expenditures start to kick in, and that's when we may have an impact to our budget above and beyond our existing debt service budget, if you will. And the debt service budget has been forecasted at the full 7% of net general fund revenues to stay with our financial policies.
What about the Leahy? There's still talk. There's been discussions about having an debt override this year. I haven't seen anything yet. So it hasn't come before the council yet. So I don't know if we're going to get that this year. I think the expectation is to get it on the ballot for this fall, but the school department's working on that. We do have, I think that's the expectation, to get it on the fall's agenda. But again, we got to get communicate with the city leaders, the mayors of the city council, and it has to pass a vote of the city council and put it on the ballot. So it's first got to get to the council, then it has to get if the city council approves it, to place it on the ballot, and then of course it has to go to the voters for a vote. I just want to comment on the excess taxing capacity. As you said, it's a piggy bank we don't want to break. We don't want to break open. I think I mentioned earlier, in either 2004 or 5, the city did have an excess taxing capacity of 4 to 5 million back in those early 2000s, and somebody tapped that bank and wiped it clean. It was. We've now got it built up to 8 million. Let's see if we can keep that piggy bank full. Great. And my last question. So I guess it's to be determined regarding the Leahy. We're going to kick that can so we figure out what's going on with the override. There may or may not be a new school. We got to figure out if we get it on the ballot and what the vote is. So my last point is dealing with these fiscal prognostications and forecasts. I don't have in front of me, but so how many years have we been doing these kinds of forecasts? 5 years, 6 years, 7? It's been a while, right?
I think we started in FY 16 or 17 was the first 5-year forecast, either 16 or 17. I think it was 16.
I would be really curious to see how close we were in when the forecast came out, let's say in FY 18 or something like that, and see 4 years out, how close are our numbers of our predictions were. And have you done that kind of analysis and see how we've been doing?
Well, I know we've exceeded our forecast in the sense that in each of the last several years, we've increased our free cash balances, which is the free. Our free cash is really the excess revenues over expenditures annually that the city has.
Mhm.
The forecast is a budgeted number, and the actual numbers are what we actually put in our free cash. And just as an example, because I happen to have it in front of me, is in FY 7116 we had a free, or 7115 we had a free cash of 7.5 million. Then we increased that to 12.1 in FY at the end of FY 16, 14.1 at the end of FY 17, and we're 15 million, 16, 15.7 in FY 7119 for FY 18, and then in FY 19 we ended up with 15.7 in 19, and then 18.8 million for FY 20. So we've each of those years we've added to our free cash position, which means our revenues have exceeded our budget. So our forecast might have called for a deficit, but we were able to turn a profit.
So would you, Mr. Chairman, would you be so kind as to, I'm just curious to get that one page, that first page that you have, that's a summary. Mm-hmm. I would love to take a look at the last 4 of those and see, how did we do? How did we predict 22? How did we change over time? And that as a decision maker and a policy maker, like the other 8 of us, we can see how much confidence do we have about our predictions for FY 26 that we're seeing here today. Realize there's a lot of dynamics. These things are not they're not stagnant, they're dynamic. So we would need to figure out what those are. But it would help me to see how good is this tool? How close are we? And it doesn't mean no one's to blame if we're off or not off, because things change. Who could predict Columbia Gas? Who could predict COVID? I mean, these are things that are unpredictable, right? So, but those are factored into our budget. Can you do that, Mr. Chairman, through you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Reinald?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think we could.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. Are there questions from other members? Motions?
I like to send this up to the full council as a committee report. There's no action required of it. So that's my motion. Without a recommendation.
Without a recommendation. As a committee report, I talked over Councilor Levy, who properly seconded it. And she did second a motion to send this up to the full council as a committee report only. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Mr. Garcia, please call the roll for this motion to send this up as a committee report.
Councilor Levy,
Yes.
Councilor LaPlante,
Yes.
and Chairman Abdul.
Georgie.
Let the record show that Councilor Levy voted yes, and the chair votes yes as well. And that's a 3-0 vote to send to the full council as a committee report. So with that, that is the new item from June 15th. I can't make a motion, but I do question, and maybe other members may as well, item number 17920. While we have Mr. Ryanello here, on September 3rd, 2020, this notice of funding Commonwealth of Massachusetts to study, design, and build a new police station for $49 million. I do believe that is a moot subject now, but I would defer to anyone who wants to make a motion, or I don't think anyone can comment on it.
Mr. Chairman, I honestly think we already moved that up to the full council. We've already had a vote on that at the full council level. I think that's just an administrative task that someone just did not remove it from there. If I'm pretty confident we had that vote, and it's been twice now at the full council level. And that's been taken care of. Unless somebody's memory is different than mine, I would recommend, again, this is just an administrative task. It's already been moved up. It's already sent out to the committee. So just remove it.
Very good. Mr. Garcia, if you could make a note to the record that item number 17920 dated September 3rd, 2020 be removed from the agenda as it has been dispensed with at a previous meeting. With that, is there any motions to entertain any tabled business, or are there any other motions?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second.
I'll second it.
There's a motion by Councilor Levy to adjourn. It's been properly seconded by President LaPlante. Hearing there is no discussion, Mr. Garcia, please call the roll.
Councilor Levy,
Yes.
Councilor LaPlante,
Yes.
and Chairman Abdul.
Chair votes yes. This committee stands adjourned for the evening. And I want to thank Mr. Garcia for your support this evening, as well as the unseen but much appreciated Mr. John Mejia behind the scenes, and as well as Mr. Iannello for spending the evening with us tonight. So thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.